It's the full moon, October 6th, 2025. There's a lot happening here at the full moon that's going to affect what's going on in politics, but I'll get to that in a minute. First, let's talk about how this might impact us on a personal level, and then I'll get to the juicy government stuff. And if you haven't seen my previous videos about the recent eclipses, eclipses have a way of unfolding more than they actually are a defined point in time. Everything that's happening now is a continuation of that unfolding. So, anyway, link in the comments or someplace, somewhere. So, but for right now, we've got the moon in Aries and the sun in Libra. You might be feeling a little bit feisty, but waffling about what kind of action to actually take. The full moon in Aries is ruled by a really powerful Mars in his original home of Scorpio. He's also hosting Black Moon Lilith and Mercury there too. So the communication, the way we're thinking about things, Mercury. So the sun in Libra is ruled by this weak Venus in Virgo, where Venus, it's really easy for her to find fault with everything and even things that she would normally feel pretty good about. And that kind of puts a bitter taste in the sun's mouth. So there might be a feeling of edginess. And that important Venus is also hanging out with the south node of the moon, the past and what needs to be left behind. And that's, you know, we can be kind of glib about that, like what needs to fall away. But it can be really sad and emotional to leave things behind. There can be a lot of grief going on here in the background, and I really encourage you to honor that as we're letting go. So that sun in Libra feels kind of discontented, and that helps. That's going to be what's helping push the wheel of change that's happening around the moon. We've got this influence of retrograde Pluto and retrograde Uranus, like kind of pinging around the chart by aspect and by rulership. And there's a lot of that energy going on in this chart overall, like painting the whole picture. This energy of going back and doing it over, but with like these leaps of self empowerment. It's like we're ready to clean this infected wound or to see the part of our lives that we've neglected or disowned and really get to the root of the issue. We might be identifying the parts of us that have been wronged, maybe even by ourselves, wronging ourselves by bowing to what somebody else wants, wants for themselves, instead of honoring ourselves and what we know is true, what our experience is going to be. And some of us have really had it up to here with being told what to do. And so, as we're heading towards this ideal of full health and strength and empowerment, it's important to start really imagining what that's going to look like for us. Like, what is the goal? What is, I mean, not just some for things to be better, like what concrete things are in that better? And because if we don't have a goal that then instead of like moving forward, we're just kind of stumbling around or treading water. Like, where are we going specifically? We have to think it before we can be it. It doesn't just happen accidentally. So we might be thinking a lot about getting to the bottom of what's going on. You know, the sun wants to stay on the fulcrum of the teeter totter there in Libra, trying not to see what's there. I mean, it's right in the middle of Libra, 14 degrees, so it's right on the fulcrum, and kind of trying not to see what's there, not trying to not pick winners and losers, maybe. all the supporting characters on the other side up there with the moon are really wanting clarity and change. Like, and a big part of that clarity is so that we can discern what we need to get rid of, discern what is passing away, what's not useful anymore. And this can be a painful process. It's going to come with some grief when we're giving things like things are going away from our lives, and even things that we've wanted to have go for a long time. We can get a clue about what topics this will involve for ourselves personally by looking at what house Libra falls in our natal chart. That's the teeter totter side. That's where the sun is, and the moon in our Aries house, which will be right across from that. That's where we're like feeling this struggle for justice and for the wounds to be healed and for a new consciousness kind of thing. That's the topics of our Aries house. So, in this teeter totter of Libra, a desire for fairness that's lighting up our feelings. And like we might be full of either, I'm not going to say I told you so, but I told you so kind of energy, or I don't want it because it's not fair kind of energy. And any sort of I knew it, I knew it, I knew it, I knew it that might be going along with either one of those two scenarios is going to feel more painful than it will victorious, you know? Like we've been hurt before for not being believed, and it's really tempting to be in your face about being right about something, but it's not going to be helpful or satisfying. I know a lot of people, including myself, have lived with this sustained anger around feelings of helplessness. And when we turn that anger in on ourselves because we can't express it outwards, that's where we get depressed. That's that is depression. There's a lot of feminine rage in this chart, and the anger of any of us that have been punched down on, no other matter if you are man or beast, man, woman, or someone in between. You know, right now we're in this initial phase of justice giving us a hand. And it's still the painful part where we're waiting for that to happen. So, our directive for the full moon is to identify what limiting thoughts, like what restrictive ideologies have we been going along with without questioning it. We need to go back and make things right for ourselves, heal ourselves, honor the suffering. And this part is really important. Decide what we want to fill that empty space up with once all that pain and grief and anger is gone. You know, we can't skip over the healing part, but it helps to heal the wound when we know what we're healing it for. And, you know, as always, it all depends on how this is hitting your chart. There might be something wonderful in this for you, and knowing that things might be going really well for you, but this is the picture for the world that's out there, you know. That makes sense. The sea we're swimming in, this is what that looks like. And so we might be having some kind of joyous occasion, and you know, there's that happiness can completely outweigh any of the painful growth that's happening overall in the big picture. So still enjoy life. It's so important to take time and enjoy our lives in the meanwhile. Pet your dog, throw the ball. Okay, so let's talk about how all of this looks for us on a national and world level. So I'm going to show what the chart looks like in Washington, D.C. So here's how the chart looks for the full moon in Washington, D.C., 10:47 p.m. Eastern Time. And look at all of the women supporting the moon here in Aries. Chiron is the only dude. Chiron here is the only dude, and he's definitely an ally. And first, right off the bat, the moon here, feminine extraordinaire, and the moon belongs to the people. The people belong to the moon. She is also about children, women, nurturing, and what we are focusing on as a group. And then we have got Cassandra, who knew, but nobody believed her. She was subject to a lot of humiliation and abuse, too. Does that sound familiar? Why must we have files when we have plenty of witnesses? We don't need no stinking files. But I digress. We've got Eris right here who starts shit to point out injustice, very much on the nose for these times. And we've got Ceres, who stopped all life on the planet from growing, throwing the world into winter when her daughter was abducted. She is not afraid to burn down the house so she can rebuild it later better so that it serves the people. She is democratic and environmental and wholesome. And this her energy here reminds me of the government shutdown going on as I record this. And then we've got Neptune here. And Neptune, Liz Green sees her as a feminine archetype, and I really agree with that. So she is at 0 of Aries. And like, get a load of this. Neptune represents the collective consciousness and our consciousness within the collective, and how those collective beliefs and our personal beliefs shape our reality, even when we believe things that aren't true, right? Our beliefs and the culture around us. So we grow and evolve with Neptune through disillusionment and like realizing we have been deceived. And a lot of times that is has been in the name of religion. And in that realization, like that one by one awakening of consciousness, that is how we change as a collective, my good bitches in Christ. And all of these planets are retrograde. Like, look at that retrograde. Everybody's retrograde. They're all going back to take care of unfinished business. You got. And this is happening in Aries, and Aries is a cardinal sign, it's a fire sign. So that is supporting fiery action. And Aries ruler Mars is in his co-ruled sign of Scorpio. He rules that with Pluto. Pluto, Mars here in Scorpio wants to fight for metamorphosis, for big, all-encompassing change. And he is the one that is sending instructions back to the moon up here, because he rules Aries. And Mars is right there with Black Moon Lilith, sexual taboos, power dynamics, overwhelming emotions, hidden unethical behavior. This is an opportunity to transmogrify the sexual destruction of women victimized as girls into a powerful rebuke. We also have asteroid Nemesis here. And, I got to tell you, I always thought Nemesis was a dude, but I'll be damned if she's not a feminine archetype too. And her symbolism is not synonymous with enemy either. That's what I always thought, that my nemesis is my enemy. She is divine retribution, y'all. She is the big find out. She brings justice to people who are smugly overconfident, to like people who think their shit doesn't stink, to people who think that they can shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose any voters, loveronies. So we've got all of that. powering the moon. And the only object in this lineup that's aspecting the sun and the moon is Nemesis. Like, it's crazy. She's in a tight semi sextile to the sun and an inconjunct to the moon. Restrictions have begun on the sun, and they are brought by Nemesis. So we should start seeing the fall from grace begin. The moon in conjunct Nemesis brings the will to do something, but it's got to serve the greater good, the whole. And what would serve the whole more than bringing justice and speaking truth to power? Another way this could play out is that Nemesis showing folks who've been deceived where justice can actually be found. And we've got a lovely sextile between Jupiter and Venus. And that could give some support to the sun, symbolizing the sun as a symbol of the head of government. But always remember, though, Jupiter can always give us enough powder to blow our own asses up. This is Jupiter can be too big for your britches and high on your own gas kind of energy. Besides that, Jupiter is in the moon sign of Cancer. So all of the energy he's sending to that unhappy Venus in Virgo is brought to you by this moon in Aries, ruled by Mars in Scorpio and Pluto in Aquarius. So again, it's that right going back to that root of metamorphosis. And that Pluto is going to unearth and expose the truth and like take out the trash. And Cancer is rising in this chart for the Capitol building in DC. And I really like that too, because Cancer is ruled by this loaded moon up here. Now I have got the correct chart with the at the Capitol building. And as you see here, the ascendant is at 14 degrees 15 minutes. And look at that, 14 degrees 8 minutes. 14 degrees 8 minutes. And the descendant. So the sun and the moon square the ascendant, and so what's on the rise and what is visible, and it's only off by 7 minutes, like a tiny fraction of a degree, and so that gives this full moon and the tension behind it a lot of extra oomph there in the capital. I feel like the chickens are going to be coming home to roost. There are a lot of little details, too many to really go into. And they're all supporting a major metamorphosis in the way people see the ruler of the country, the way they're seeing the sun. Look at Eris and Aries on top of Chiron and the square to Jupiter. It feels like iodine in the wound, it burns. And these two are sextile, and these two are sextile to Persephone over here. I find interesting. She is the one who disappeared. How about all those migrants that have been disappearing and the all the young women who've disappeared, who powerful men don't want to see, have be seen? Could this be the people hurting because of the government shutdown or like uproar over the Affordable Care Act? Or maybe it's going to be more revelations about the peddling of sweet Ophelia. That is where my money is. The other cute thing happening is this sextile between Cassandra, right next to the moon, and asteroid Lilith. And again, it's these themes of feminine sexuality and repression and knowing but not being believed, you know? And then that theme of justice that comes up. So, this Saturn structure that's being washed away in Pisces, and that's again retrograde happening, retrograde Saturn and retrograde Neptune that rules Pisces. To me, this is disillusionment. I think it points to the forces that have been pitting us against each other, and it might be a real excellent opportunity to come together and heal this long-standing animosity that's been created to drive us apart. If we can change how we see each other, like grow something new out of the ashes of disillusionment, we might collectively see that we regular people have a lot more in common than not. Because when we're together, we're the strong ones, right? So keep the faith, loveronis. There are many, many more of us than there are of them. And our numbers are growing every day because people can see that their lived reality doesn't square with what they're being told is reality. We're going to rise out of the ashes of this and make a better world than we've ever imagined. That's really, again, back to that the importance of imagining what it is we want. We have to load our plate up with what we want the world to be like, not just, I want things to be better than they are now. What specifically do we want? Freedom of speech, that's a good one. And the No Kings rally is coming up on October 18th. I will see you there. And if you're struggling now, or even if you're not, maybe you are doing really fine, but you're just kind of stuck or never had an astrology reading before, look me up. You can schedule a reading at michellecraft.love. Like and subscribe, and I will see you